Welcome to the Lakeshore Christian Church Midweek podcast. I'm Pastor Randy Cordell. We're coming to you live from our studio at our Antioch campus here in Nashville, Tennessee. We're happy to have you joining us today. If you haven't already done so, we'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast. Just hit that subscription button. You might also want to hit that notification bell so that you get notified each time a new episode drops. We come to you live at noon on Wednesdays, and once it's posted, you can listen to it anytime after that. Each week on the podcast, we spend some time going a little deeper into the message series that we're having here at Lakeshore. And right now, we are in a series called David, the Life of a King. And we're just going straight through the account of David's life and pulling out the lessons that we learned from David, both the good and the bad, the things that he got right, the things that he did not get right. There are lessons there for all of us because we all deal with some of the same kind of things. Now, it's hard sometimes to think if he's a king that we could relate to his life, but it's true that there are lessons there for all of us, no matter what circumstance we find ourselves in. We are refurbishing our podcast studio here a little bit, so it's kind of a refresh that we're doing. I hope you like the new look. We still got a few things we're going to be doing to it, but I'm liking it so far, and we'll see what little tweaks we might make on that. Well, this past week's message in the life of David, we talked about what I call life's most subtle temptation. And that temptation that I'm talking about there is the temptation to get revenge. We all have people along the way who hurt us or deceive us, or they talk bad about us behind our back, or they try to sabotage something that we're trying to do. There are people that do us wrong sometimes in this world. And when they do, in the flesh, we have that natural inclination to want to get back at them some way, to be able to make them pay for what they've done that we feel like was unjust against us. And David, certainly in 1 Samuel 24, we have this record of an account where David had the perfect opportunity to get revenge against his enemy. Now, the enemy was not someone David chose to be an enemy. It's someone who chose to be an enemy of David. And that, of course, is King Saul. Once David killed the giant Goliath, his popularity began to really rise. He had great respect, and then he was made an officer in the army, and he was sent out on battles, and he continued to have great success, and his popularity just got bigger and bigger. And Saul began to see David as a threat. I mean, from the very beginning, when they started singing songs of praise where they said, Saul has slain his thousands, but David is tens of thousands, it began to really get under Saul's skin. And so he made a decision along the way that he needed to eliminate David. And it got so bad by the time we pick up in 1 Samuel 24 that David has had to flee the palace, even though for a while he had served there and was well-liked in the palace. He was great friends with Saul's son Jonathan. It just got so bad with Saul attempting to kill him that he had to leave the palace. And in 1 Samuel 24, he's been away from the palace for a while. He has recruited a team of men to come around him because he's on the run. He's having to travel from place to place, and he had the support of this group around him that he's selected. And they're out there in an area that's somewhat remote, and there's some caves in the area. And Saul gets word that David is out there. He's been trying to hunt him down so that he could kill him. And when he got the word of where David's location was, he recruited thousands of young men to go with him to hunt down David and kill him. It's amazing that he had gotten to that place, that his jealousy was so strong. He was so threatened by David and his popularity that he thought his only option, his best option, was to eliminate David. So they go out to the area they believe David is in. As they look for David, Saul needs to relieve himself. The New International Version says in chapter 24, there are different translations that say it a different way, but basically Saul needed to go to the bathroom. And so he looked for a private place to do that, like any of us would. And he saw a cave there, and he decided to go inside the cave. So he leaves the men that he's got with him there to by himself go into this cave to use the bathroom. Now, what he doesn't know is David and his men are in that very cave. And so when Saul comes in, David and his men go further back into the cave and hide back there. And they stay very quiet so that Saul won't know they're there. And then while Saul is there using the bathroom, he had taken off his outer robe and to use the bathroom, and he laid it to the side most likely. And David's men say to David, they whisper, "This is your chance. God has handed your enemy over to you, and here's an easy opportunity for you to eliminate Saul. You could kill him right here, and then you'll be freed from having to run for your life all the time and hide out all the time, and you could go ahead and ascend to the throne that God's already set you apart and anointed you to be king, and this is a way for you to go ahead and make that happen by eliminating Saul." And instead, David did something different. He snuck up on Saul. Saul didn't know he was there. He cut off a piece of his robe, and then he went back to his men. And his men were still trying to say, well, if you don't want to kill him, we will. But David said, no, I'm not going to lay a hand against God's anointed. I'm not going to take his life. So Saul finishes, and he leaves the cave, and then David goes out, and he's got that piece of his robe in his hand. He tries to convince Saul that he means him no harm. He had every opportunity to kill him there, and he didn't do it. And Saul, at least for that moment, got very emotional. He realizes that David has spared his life, and he's grateful for what David's done. And he said to David, I know you're going to be the king, and Israel's going to prosper under you. And I just want you to remember my line, my descendants, so that my descendants are not cut off completely. And David made an oath that he would do that. So even with the opportunity to get revenge, and he had from a worldly point of view, he had every reason to take revenge. He decided that what he needed to do was just stay in line with where God wanted him to be, live like God wanted him to live, and he was going to wait on God's timing and let God handle Saul in the way that God chose to, instead of taking matters in his own hands. That shows a great maturity, even at an early age, even under difficult circumstances, that David was showing in his relationship with God. It's hard for us to get to that place where we don't let the flesh override the spirit, where we don't let the flesh control us in the heated moments. And one thing I talked about this past Sunday that it's important for all of us to do is we've got to decide before the temptation gets there what kind of person we're going to be, instead of waiting until we're in the heat of the moment, because in the heat of the moment, it's too easy for the flesh to overrule the spirit. So we have to make a commitment before that time. Here's the person I'm going to be. I'm going to live a God-honoring life, so that when those temptations do arise, we're not caught off guard, we're prepared in advance, and we can make the best decision to honor God. So I closed last week with 3 lessons that we learned, 3 things we need to remember from this example that David gives us in 1 Samuel 24. The first one is, in this world, in this life, we need to expect trouble. We need to expect that temptation is going to be there, that we're going to have bad things happen to us. Jesus said this in John 16, verse 33. I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. Now, those 2 things seem contradictory if you stop there. He said, I've told you these things so you can have peace. And then right away he says, but in this world, you're going to have trouble. He's saying both of those things can exist at the same time. You need to know there is going to be trouble, but there is a way to have peace even in the midst of the trouble. He says, but take heart, I have overcome the world. That's how we can have peace even when bad things are happening, even when people aren't treating us right, even when there's injustice done against us. It's found in the person of Jesus and our relationship with him. That's where peace can be found, so that we don't let ourselves be ruled by the flesh and the temptations of the flesh. We are at peace with God when we know who we are and we know whose we are through Jesus. And then the second lesson was this. We need to also anticipate the temptation for revenge is going to be there. There are going to be circumstances where we're not treated fairly. And this world is that way. We're under the curse of sin in this world. And this world is broken. And we're only here temporarily, but in the time that we're here, we're going to have conflict with a broken world. And we have to decide who we're going to be in a world like that and what action we're going to take in a world like that. And we're going to, in the flesh, when things are done to us that we think are not fair, we're going to, in the flesh, want to retaliate and get revenge. So knowing that in advance, we need to prepare for that in advance. When you know something's coming, you can prepare for it. Well, you can know for sure bad things are going to come in this world, so prepare in advance for how you're going to respond to those bad things. There are practical things we can do to get ready in advance for those challenges we're going to face. For example, we know we could spend time in prayer every day. We know we can spend time in God's Word every day. Those things will help prepare us so that when the temptations come, we're not caught off guard. We have the resources and the strength we need to respond properly. You remember when Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, he had been fasting for 40 days. He was tired. He was hungry. That's when you're most vulnerable. He was emotionally worn out. And Satan came to him and tempted him. And Jesus, in facing those temptations, answered Satan every time with, "It is written." So Jesus spent time in prayer. He spent time in the Word so that when those temptations came, he didn't have to go try to look up a verse somewhere. They were hidden in his heart, in his mind, so that he could bring them to mind right away. That's part of the way we prepare for the temptations we face. We put those things in our heart and in our mind so that we can be ready when the temptation hits and not have to try to get ready in the heat of the moment. That's a hard time to really prepare when you're already real deep into the temptation. Other things we can do are really practical things. I talked about some I've done in my life and ministry, and these are not unique to me. I learned these from a mentor that I had who was an older pastor when I was a very young pastor. And he told me, here's some things I do, some safeguards I put in my life to protect my marriage and my ministry. So I've tried to implement those same things in my life. Now, I was young and naive when he told me these things. I didn't always understand why they were a big deal or so important, but I respected him. And because he told me to do these things, I did them early on in ministry. Things like making sure I had my own devotional time, not just sermon preparation time, but a personal devotion time. Things like not doing long-term counseling with a female by herself, because it's just too easy for things to emotionally get too connected there with that person. Things like having a office door where I have a glass where you can see in my office. If you walk by, you can look in any time and see that there's nothing inappropriate going on in that office. Things like not traveling alone with a female for business trips or anything like that. They're just practical things. So there are steps all of us can take. Every circumstance is different. Every person's life is made up of different things, but all of us have ways we can prepare in advance before the temptation hits to prevent us from falling into temptation and doing something we're going to regret that hurts us or hurts other people. And sometimes one of those temptations is going to be, I want to get revenge on that person that's hurt me, that's treated me wrong. Jesus sets us a great example in that area. In Matthew chapter 26, Jesus is being arrested and he's going to be put through that mockery of a trial. And his disciples want to run to his defense. Remember Peter, when they came out in the garden to arrest him, Peter cut off a soldier's ear there, and Jesus had to put the ear back and heal the soldier, and he had to tell Peter to put away his sword. But he said this to his disciples, "Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen this way?" Jesus said, of course I could have defended myself. Of course I could have attacked and had victory, physical victory over these people coming out to arrest me. But Jesus was submissive to the Father's will. He knew that the Father had a plan, and that plan was for the redemption of the world, for the healing of the brokenness from sin. He knew he didn't need to go against God's plan, the Father's plan. And it included, this plan, his being arrested, his being crucified. And so Jesus was able to withhold the temptation to take revenge against those who were mistreating him, falsely accusing him, treating him in a way that was totally unjust and unfair. But he was allowing that to happen because he knew his Father was still in control, and his father would take care of things and bring about the right results, and justice would be satisfied by God. And so we need to remember, that was the third lesson, and that is we need to refuse to do God's job for him. God will take care of the injustices of this world. He will handle those things in the best possible way. In Romans 12:19, Paul said it this way, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' says the Lord." We don't have to take revenge. We can trust God to handle the injustices against us and against people we care about. It doesn't mean we don't take up for each other or try to help each other, but we don't have to get the revenge ourselves. God is in charge of that. It's in God's job description, not ours. And so we don't need to try to take that responsibility on ourselves. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but one of the reasons I talked about Sunday is this. God has all the information. He sees things we don't see. He hears things we don't hear. He knows circumstances we don't know about. He is better equipped to execute justice than we ever could be. We only know part of the story. We only know what we've seen and what we've heard. We don't know everything like God knows. So God is able, with his wisdom, with his omnipotence, with his omniscience, he's able to see and know exactly how this best needs to be handled. And we can trust God to do that. When it comes to Saul's life, Saul ended up paying the price for his evil deeds. He ended up being attacked by the Philistines, and he ended up not only were his sons killed probably right in front of his eyes, he saw that happen, then he was wounded himself and fell on his own sword to commit suicide. He didn't want the enemy to be able to take him like that, and so he fell on his own sword. He was humiliated through this defeat and then his death that occurred the way it did. But David honored God's timing, and it was after he had been on the run for, scholars believe, probably about 8 years or more, where he was not yet going to be made king, even though he had already been set apart to be king. But David waited on God and let God handle that situation with Saul, and then he was able to take the throne that God wanted him to have in the timing that God wanted it to be. It's so difficult for us to wait on the Lord, but that's one of the key signs of spiritual maturity for us, is when we don't try to rush things and take matters into our own hands. We simply walk in obedience, trusting God and trusting God's timing to handle things in the right and just way. He's a just God. When we get to know him, we get to understand that and trust that in our own lives. So if you missed this message, I hope you could go back, and we have it archived on our YouTube channel. You can go back and watch it or listen to it there. This coming Sunday, we're going to continue our study of the life of Saul. The message this Sunday I've entitled A Fool's Death. Now, I don't use the term fool lightly. The reason I use that term for the title of this sermon is because Saul himself says, "I've been a foolish person," and he ends up dying a foolish death. So I hope you can join us this coming Sunday. We have services here at the Antioch campus at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. We have service at our Smyrna campus at 10 a.m., and we live stream our services at 9 a.m. every Sunday morning. Before we go today, just a couple things I want to remind you of. This week, we've got a large group of elementary age kids at camp at White Mills Christian Camp. We've got some staff there as well and volunteers from Lakeshore. I've gotten a report already. They're having a great week of camp. Just keep them covered in prayer as they finish up this week of camp and as they travel back at the end of the week. We are also still accepting donations for the Point Gap Scholarship Fund. You can do that by going online at lakeshorechristian.com. Just click on that Give tab and choose Point Scholarship in the drop-down menu there, and you can donate any amount for that scholarship fund. We've got students that are going tuition-free to Point University online, and our scholarships are help making that possible. We have Father's Day coming up, Sunday, June the 15th. We're going to be honoring all the dads that are present, and then we'll be having a drawing for a special prize for a father that's present at each of our services on Sunday, June the 15th. Then on Sunday, June 22nd, we have a Thrift Smart donation drive happening. We partner with Thrift Smart. It's a thrift store here in Nashville that does, with their profits, they support local missions. They also take the donations we give them and weigh them, and based on the weight, they give us back gift cards that we can use. If someone comes to us that needs some help, maybe with getting some clothing or household items, we can then give them gift cards to go and shop at the Thrift Smart store. They always have great selection there of different items that people might need. So it's a great way for us to help people. So we want you to bring any items you can to the Antioch campus before or on that Sunday, June the 22nd, so that we can load the truck. We want to fill up that truck and get those gift cards to use for our local ministry here. Thank you for joining us today here at our Lakeshore Christian Church podcast. We hope you can join us in person or online in the future as we continue to connect, grow, and serve here at Lakeshore Christian Church.